Hello and welcome to episode 26 of the Candor Beach podcast. Elections are underway, and which is why today we're going to talk about the business of elections. So, Sailesh, without further ado, why should people care?
I mean, it's for all the people, right? For the people, of the people, and by the people. So everybody should care about elections. So if you look at it, we're going to start off with how elections affect stock market. What are your thoughts?
Well, historically speaking, the stock market has been positively impacted the year running
Hmm.
into elections. So, as an example, we saw in with Atal Bihari Vajpayee in back in 1999 when his BJP coalition came into power. Uh, Before the election, like 1 year before the election, it gave a return of 50.7% up until like when his party came into power. The following term, with Dr. Manmohan Singh representing the Congress, you saw a gain of 98.1%.
Wow.
However, the subsequent year, when Manmohan Singh retained power, his government retained power, there was a correction of 25%. The following term, when Sri Narendra Modi, our current Prime Minister, came into power, a gain of 16.6%. That was significantly shot down the following term, like at 5.2%. But yeah, it remains to be seen
I mean,
whether.
yeah, there are high expectations for Dr. Manmohan Singh to come in, right? So he was the architect behind bringing India from what do you call
The dark
the
ages of sorts, right? License
bankruptcy?
Raj and such.
1991. So there is a high expectancy. So that's why you have 98% growth when he was coming into power.
So is it
So
the
yeah, so
people?
I would
Is it the people, or is it a factor of elections? Or do we throw
the
that to the
people
audience?
for we'll throw that to the audience. Let them decide. I think we should give opinion over it. So, but we'll let the audience decide. So, if you think about it, what do participants gain out of this? With I mean, the participants, the people who are getting elected, and the corporate. What who gets what?
So I think first and foremost, participants get a strong sway in key decisions and key policies. Like as an example, we
Hmm.
were talking about a certain capital that did not come to be,
Hmm.
that received funding that is now speculative, where
Hmm.
they decided on routing roads around properties that the people in power owned,
Hmm.
and now there's a corruption scandal against that particular group. So they
Yeah.
definitely get sway in
So
key decisions.
yeah, I mean, if you look at it, so we have the first, yeah, participants like the people who are participating in the elections, they get power, right? So they have massive amounts of power to wield. Then we have when it comes to corporate lobbying comes into play. So we have major decisions happening with corporate lobbying. So what happened with, for example, in California, Prop 22 was put in place to actually take down AB 5, Assembly Bill 5, which actually categorized these workers, gig workers, as employees, which is actually hurting these companies. So they actually went ahead and put like $200 million worth of advertising campaigns
Wow.
to prop up Proposition 55. That actually took down AB 5. So if you look at it, that's corporate lobbying, which actually majorly benefited these corporate companies. So that's another thing with corporate lobbying. Corporate lobbying helps every participant in major elections. So yeah, so with regards to the participants and corporate lobbying, well, what do you think corporate lobbying works in India too? What are your thoughts
For
in
sure,
corporate
for
lobbying
sure,
in
for
India?
sure. Uh, Let me just drop a couple of names: Adani and
Mm,
Vedanta.
mm,
Like both, when you're looking at their revenues, you see that they're skyrocketing. When you're looking at how well run those businesses are, there are instances where they're doing, like there's undoubtedly good business acumen. There are strong players working in the
yeah.
market, but at the same time, if you're looking at their growth, it's unprecedented. Adani Adani's growth spurt over the last couple of years has been astronomical, which is why it's been subject to the Hindenburg report, right?
Yeah.
Similarly, with Vedanta, loss making ventures that are somehow covered up, that are somehow made up, and favorable, like at the end of the day, there is a certain degree of favorable policies that are launched towards them. Like, as an example, with Adani and Adani Ports.
Mm.
We saw that the government was looking at giving a certain rebate on custom payments on Australian coal. And then if you looked into who owned Australian coal, you would see, like, Australian coal mines, you would see Adani on top of that list. So it wasn't like directly linked, it wasn't directly linked favoritism, but at the end of the day, there was a policy and there was an entity that benefited from that policy. You make of it what you will.
Mm.
So
So I mean, if
definitely
that
helps.
corporate lobbying actually gets actually very bad too. Like if you remember during 2016 elections, presidential elections, we post that election, we came across Cambridge Analytica scandal.
Facebook.
There was a lot of a breach of trust, breach of a lot of these accounts, personal information being routed to target people, to influence them to vote for a certain person or a certain party.
Yeah, let's circle back to this when we were talking about the media bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, cool. So that's corporate
let's
influence.
talk about the trend.
Yeah. I was going to say that just a quick recap. What the participants are getting finally are sway in key decisions and policies, so a certain degree of corporate influence, because it's a give and take. Like we talked about what corporates get, but obviously I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Participants are supposed to be there to uplift the groups they represent, and there are certain people who get into politics for their legacy. Because once you're an MP or an MLA, like a member of parliament or a member of a legislative assembly, it's part of your moniker for life. But yeah, moving on. What are the trends that we are seeing, Sailesh? You talked about this a couple of weeks back, I think, or a couple of podcasts back.
Yeah. Rise of right-wing politics and rise of civilization states. So first we'll start with right-wing politics, right? So we have multiple right-wing governments which are coming into power. We've seen that in Italy. We have seen that in New Zealand. We've seen that happen in India. Like India is on the second term of Sri Narendra Modi, and that's a right-wing government. And I'm gonna think they're gonna be in power for another term, for sure. And if you look at America too, Trump is actually gaining steam. He's another right-wing government which is coming into play most probably 2024.
Quick question.
So
this was something that you talked about. Right wing, or has the left wing shifted to a point where everything is right wing?
Sure, very good question. Yes. The left actually became more left, which makes Trump is actually a centrist if you look at it, and which makes him they shifted so left that they make everybody look, even a centrist look right. So,
you were talking about this a few years ago, right? That Trump technically supported Democrats, like he had come out in support of the Democrats, but then I think the whole rivalry with Obama as well didn't help.
Yeah. So, that is one thing. And then we actually talked about this too, the rise of civilization states, right? So after the Ukraine-Russia war, we have all these countries taking vigilance, saying that the sanctions going to hurt them. And they're trying to, source most of their, national security stuff. Exactly.
Right.
From international supply chains.
Right.
So that is huge, man. That's actually going deglobalization, right? So
deglobalization was something that, like, and the civilization states that you just alluded to were topics of a previous podcast, and we can If you remember which ones, link it to the in the description.
Yeah, I'll
um,
definitely link it to the
yeah, let's
description.
figure that out. All right, so we've talked about why people should care. We've talked about
Hmm.
what trends we are seeing, like in the shifting political climes. Now,
Hmm.
let's get to what influences people. Like, why are people voting?
Oh yeah. So I would say freebies.
All right, so
So
let's break it
I
down for
mean,
the audience. I would like to set
yeah,
context and give the floor to you. If you consider the economic strata, the distribution, there is typically the lower echelon, the strata that earns the least. They form the base of the pyramid, like 50% plus. And then you have the middle class and the upper class, so 1%, 10, 20, whatever, depending on the country, and then the bottom half, practically, or more, right? So you have a large volume sitting in the lower echelon. You have a large volume that is in desperate need of economic reform and in need of not sufferance but support, right? Like they're the
yeah,
ones that primarily need assistance. They are the ones that primarily need that is not to say that you shouldn't have represent equal representation, but this was something that Plato had argued, that when you uplift the base, the lowest common denominator, that's when society as a whole progresses. So it makes sense to help the lower strata. So Silesh, what do you see? You were talking freebies.
yeah. I would say, freebies actually help in elections. If you look at it, in India we have these governments coming up and giving massive, like the 200 units of electricity will be first 200 units will be waived off, or free bus rides for women, or
Free
the
televisions.
instances like yeah, free, yeah, like stuff like this, free, or like huge subsidy on LPG gas cylinders. These are all freebies which are costing the exchequer a lot of money. And if you look at it, even in America, this is happening. So you have Biden coming in saying, "I'm going to waive all the student loans," which is huge. And
Thankfully, the Supreme Court had
I
something to
mean, a
say
lot of
about
people
that.
knew. I mean, even they knew he couldn't do it with his executive power. You need the Congress or the legislative power to actually vote on to actually waive this kind of student loan debt.
Are these sort
He
of
couldn't do it
freebies
just
good?
by himself.
Are these sort of freebies good for the economy? Are they actually uplifting
No,
a section?
I mean, it's going to fall back on the taxpayer, right? So it's going to fall on the middle class. So if you're actually giving these freebies to the lowest strata of the economic structure,
Hmm.
who is picking up all these, freebies, taxpayer burden? The middle class is picking up all
So
the stuff. The people
somebody
who are
has to
actually,
pay the piper.
yes, somebody
Hmm.
has to pay. So that is going to affect the economy in all, so well, it reduces actually it reduces spending on developmental stuff like building roads or infrastructure, when all these freebies are going massive amounts to helping poor people. Rather, actually give them, I would say they should be provided opportunity to bring themselves out of the poverty.
There have been politicians, leaders across the world who have argued for opportunity over, like, teach a man to fish instead of giving him a fish, right?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
historically, people are lazy. People don't want to go in for that. Like, someone's giving it to me. It's like this. Like, I spoke to an Uber driver maybe a few months ago, and he was very insightful. Like, he talked about how a lot of people in his circle are focused on the short term. They're like, oh, I'm getting this incentive, I'm getting this thing for free. Like, as an example, the government in Andhra Pradesh is doing free housing, and that's great for people who need free housing. But at the same time, the argument that the Uber driver presented to me was that, but what about a job for my son? My son has to go to a different state because while I'm getting this incentive here, and like maybe I am getting a house,
Yeah.
whatever the house is, like a small, big, whatever land that I'm getting, the economy is tarnishing. The economy is like business is not good. The state is not earning money, because of which employment and economic prospects of the people living here are hurt. So he was like, most people look into the short term and they don't understand, they don't see the long term perspective, which is why they're voting for governments that give them these short term incentives. I sound like one of those LinkedIn bios, right? Like today I saw. This was a fact. Like this was something
Oh my
that
god. Yeah.
this was something that that someone did mention, and I think it's absolutely factual. Moving on, what else?
So
What else do people do to like? What other things influence
um,
people to vote?
I would say identity politics.
Mm.
So if you look at it, so I'll give you a classic example, right? So when Kamala Harris was running in California for local elections, she considered herself as an Indian origin person. But when she was running for presidential elections, she all of a sudden turned black. So identity politics is huge. So because you have 13% of the vote is black, and 95% of the people, black people, actually voted for Obama. So if you identify as black, you have a high propensity that black people are going to vote for you.
I mean, that's only natural, right? Because, like you said, of the
Yeah,
people, by the people, for the people. If I think you're representing me, I'm more likely to want for you to be there. Like, I'm more likely to want for you to be in power. I mean,
yeah.
hmm.
I mean, we have huge caste politics in India. We had
Don't
recently
remind me.
the Karnataka elections, right? So BJP lost because they had to move, from the major caste leader, and there was huge a caste tussle, which happens in almost every state in India, right? So we have these caste politics which happen.
I
So I
make the
mean,
same argument for the people, of the people, by the people. I think that's
exactly,
fair.
identity politics.
I don't like
Yeah,
it primarily because there are instances where a certain group is favored over other groups. Like the good of the many is sacrificed for the good of the few. With when you are off this mindset, but I think it's perfectly logical. You're incentivized to vote for your representatives at the end of the day, right?
exactly. The
So
merit
maybe
goes down. So
again, that's neither here nor there. I think like the point
mm,
is it makes sense. Like identity politics makes sense because uh, you're incentivized along those lines, except that like I said, the good of the many tends to be sacrificed for the good of the few, because when you have an
mm,
overrepresentation, or particularly a strong representation of one group, that and we've seen biases, right? Like, we are human at the end of the day. We've seen biases
yeah,
against certain groups, against certain principles, and for certain groups again. So that has a negative influence on people in general. But I guess that's the world we live in. We don't have. How would you fix this, though? Do you have any thoughts on that?
how would you fix identity politics?
Yeah.
Um, I I have no. I would say targeted. Like showing the true nature, like how for example, Kamala Harris got humiliated with Tulsi Gabbard in the Republican debate. She got called out for this. That you were actually doing identity politics. I mean, it didn't help that she still came into power, but the thing is, it actually destroyed her presidential run. She became a vice president, of course. I
Uh,
mean, I have no
I would say that
solution for it.
I would say that constituencies need to be better drawn out. Like what I think I was alluding to earlier, like thinking about it, is an unequal representation of a
Mm,
certain group in power, which causes an issue. So maybe better constituent lines, or more diversity, basically. Can't believe I'm advocating for diversity.
DEI.
Now,
Well,
diversity is good. Like, it just shouldn't be abused.
yeah.
All right.
So
Moving
let's
on.
come on to the next topic.
Yeah, the big one. How do you
Yeah.
win an election?
So yeah, so I would say targeted advertising. We have a bunch of stuff, right? So we have now. Let's talk about also the AI, how AI is being used
Uh-huh.
to spread disinformation against other participants in the election.
So if you
Because you
do,
can have.
let's do
Go
that,
ahead.
but like if you'd
Mm.
allow me a second to structure this. So
Yeah,
primarily
sure.
when you're working at winning an election, you have to keep three things in mind: the information that you're going to be providing to your audience, the media sources that you're going to be using, like media such as websites, social media,
Mm.
TV. Like as a marketer, I would say ATL, BTL, TTL. Above the makes no sense, right? Like I'm just going to say there's certain things that are targeted to the masses. There are certain things that are targeted to your core audience. uh,
Yeah.
Messaging essentially. So that's your
Yes.
information, your media, and finally how prepared as a candidate you are. So under information, you have things like your rationale, which is basically your manifesto.
Manifesto.
Like why do you want the job
Yeah.
and what will you do once you get the job? Your story, like when Narendra Modi came into power, there was this whole conversation about how he was a chai wala, like a tea vendor. The
Yeah.
core values that they represent, like their principles, what they're passionate about, the standards by which they're essentially going to be making decisions, and finally the issues that they're going to be talking about, right? Like your home policy, like with Trump and the whole Mexico that wall thing, right? That was primarily like a the like that was a home policy.
Uh,
Then
Messaging. Yeah.
yeah, your foreign policy, like with Narendra Modi and how he's ensured that India is now a force to be reckoned with. Like the
Mm.
groundwork was laid by the people who came before him, undoubtedly. Like the Congress did a lot of work to build that base. But Narendra Modi went out and marketed India. And I think we should give him props for that. And finally, like the social issues, like so your issues being home policies, foreign policies, your social issues that you're going to be tackling, and finally, fundamentally, your opponent. Uh, I'm sorry, like while we were talking, like I just saw a prompt saying Vedanta's debt challenges. Vedanta nears deals to raise 1.25 billion.
They're
Uh,
listening to you, man.
they're listening to us. Yeah, so sorry, finally, like under information, you have your rationale again, your story, your values, your issues, and your opponent. And a big reason, a big
Yeah.
contributor for why Biden came in was the anti incumbency that Trump faced. A big reason that Modi came into power, I wouldn't say the only reason, but a significant contributor was the fact that the Congress, the UPA didn't seem united sufficiently under a leader like Modi. Modi was a force to be reckoned with. The UPA had Rahul
Mm.
Gandhi that not a lot of people showed sufficient faith in as a prime ministerial candidate. And then, of
Yeah.
course, the media bloc. So that wasn't a
Yes.
second to set context, but the floor is yours, sir.
But that's good though. Yeah, I mean it's good, right? So I mean, if you look at it, you have the Modi government actually building like brought India to the world stage, right? The international perspective of India changed under Modi. So we have this huge, news media, actually propagandists. You know what happened during the Ukraine war, right? So they actually stopped the war for a day to bring back Indians. That's a huge difference. He brought in a lot of his foreign policy is extraordinary. But if you compare that with Biden's foreign policy sucks.
That's a strong word.
I mean, look at it. They tried to come out of Afghanistan, and he said there won't be a repetition of Saigon. And we saw helicopters landing on the embassy in and evacuating all the embassy personnel. That is a repetition of Saigon. It was so disastrous.
Saigon,
Even
Vietnam.
yeah,
Hmm.
even Democrats were so pissed off with it how he pulled out of Afghanistan, and we see all these guns and the equipment rolling around in Afghanistan, and Taliban now utilizing them. So I can say his foreign policy sucks.
Right.
So yeah, that's a major thing. So if you look at it, we should talk about the media perspective, how media actually affects elections.
Mm-hmm.
So if you we have multiple sources of media, right? So social media targeting. So we have targeted advertising, right? So in you like a certain candidate, you're going to get bombarded with this, which happened with this. We spoke about it in Cambridge Analytica, and
You
how
know,
media
like
actually targets.
when you say you like a candidate, that means like the people of the country or Russia too.
Yeah, yeah. No, people of the country. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, I mean, you look at AI being used to actually generate disinformation right
Deep
now.
fakes, right?
AI deepfakes. Yeah, so you have these deepfakes coming out, giving a speech, trying to sway certain audience, which is very very dangerous for elections. So media can be good and bad in the perspective of elections.
Yeah, so all right. So you have AI influencing elections. You also have the press. So you had like
Yeah.
with like take India as an example. You've NDTV was sort of like a Congress stronghold, and once NDTV was sold,
Hmm.
there was these speculations that every news house in India is now under the purview somewhat of the BJP,
Controlled by the yeah.
the incumbent. So yeah, there is obviously some influence. Like even if people deny it, I guess there is going to be some influence. You don't have like even Bloomberg as an example when he was standing for election and
Sure.
his media wing. It just happens. Like you can't help it. Like even when you're trying to be neutral, you're not going to trash your boss.
Can't do it. You're gonna get fired. Happened with Tucker Carlson.
What happened with Tucker Carlson?
So the Tucker Carlson is one of the biggest hosts who was working for Fox News, and he went pretty uh, right wing, and he got cut off. Fox News had to fire him
You know what?
because he was actually.
This is a hot take, mix like
Mm,
not related to what we are saying at all. And I think
yeah.
Fox should change their introduction, like their intro song, to "What does the
Mm.
fox say?" Yeah,
We should
sorry.
tweet that, bro.
Yeah, sorry. Completely random. You brought up Fox News. I was just thinking, yeah, what does the fox say?
Fox and Friends. Start
Yeah,
off with what does the fox say? Yeah, I mean, that's what I have to say about AI and disinformation, man. That's going to be very, very dangerous.
right.
So, other than that, what do you think? If what can we bring out of this topic? So, what are the major takes from this?
The major takes would be like going backwards. Like when you're trying
Mm-hmm.
to win an election, make sure that you understand what your rationale is and communicate it
Mm-hmm.
adequately. Identify the right sources in the media, like be it social media, website, what have you. Communicate to the right audience what your primary values are, your rationale are, what your issues are, and feel free to bash your opponent because that's fair play apparently. There is the
Yeah.
whole consequence of identity politics and certain institutions having the money to provide freebies that influence people in the short term. Ideally, you'd want for people to focus on the long term to see how a certain individual or a political influence is going to build the nation or build your lot in the long run and not focus on the short run. But unfortunately, the average Joe does not always look at the long term.
Exactly.
Um, we see political trends in nationalism and right wing politics. And of course, like fingers crossed that the stock market shoots up until what, the next 3 4 months. We're going
Yeah.
to have our first set of elections in December itself, right? Like we're going to have, like in India, we're going to
Uh,
have the
yeah.
response by December.
Yeah. Let's hope so. Everything goes well with stock market. Well,
Yes, sir.
yeah, man, that's I think it was a fantastic talk. So,
Yeah, patting
I would
ourselves on the
give
back just for the heck of it.
sure. I mean, please comment, like, comment, subscribe.
Tell us what you think
We'll be
about some of
happy
the
to hear.
issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, like tell us what you think about the impact of elections on the stock market. What do you think about politicians and the benefits that they get? We'd love to know.
I'll, we would love to know if you have any topic suggestions. If you would like for us to talk on a certain topic, we will be very open towards it.
Oh yeah, that reminds me, Sailesh. What are we talking about next time around?
We are talking. Damn, wow. What are we talking about?
The rise
Discuss
of
about?
collaboration, mate.
Oh yeah. Collab culture. Yeah, collab culture. Yes,
That's
we just
hilarious.
discussed it. Short-term memory loss, huh?
Damn man, worse than
Yeah.
a goldfish. All
What?
right,
Goldfish?
for later. All right, guys. Thank you so
Okay.
much for listening to us. Please, we'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah.
Likes, comments,
Thank you,
subscribe,
guys.
and see you on the next one.